about 8:30. We are thrilled to have Ms. Altman here with us. Thank you for coming down from God's country. To God's country. Good time of year to be in God's country. But we're very appreciative of you coming, and Ms. Altman will be also doing the Cultural Resource Authority retreat or orientation next Tuesday. So we'll get her at least twice, and we appreciate you coming and talking to us and helping us to remind, refresh, and resolve.
Assuming she comes back after the day.
So thank you. Thank you for being here. School of Government is one of our state's greatest resources. And we appreciate it. I think we use it quite a bit. And thank you for studying to make us better public officials, because I think everyone has good intentions, and sometimes we just kind of get off track, or we get tunnel vision, or we get something that the School of Government perspective can help us free us and make us good, make us even better. And so thank you for being here, and we look forward to working with you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I think this is my third trip to Western North Carolina, it seems like, since the middle of September. So I've been burning up the road this way. It seems like since I was in college, it's an easier drive than it used to be, but in my mind it's still good to plan on 4 hours to get out here. So it was a nice drive, but I must say after I got over the mountain, then the color just kind of hits you in the face. So all the whole drive I kept going, well, there's not really a lot of color, and then you just go, wow. So that's a really nice treat. So let me just give a little bit of history about why I'm here and who I am, and then talk a little bit about what I thought we would do today. It is really your time, so I want to make sure that we're in sync about how to use your time. I guess it was probably September-ish, maybe even August, when Wanda and I had a conversation to just say, you know, we've had lots of changes for the Board of Commissioners in terms of how you all are elected and who's actually here on the board. Some of you have longer tenure than others, but the truth is that it's the first time you've worked in this group, no matter what. So, and that will really potentially change group dynamics. It will change group dynamics. Trying to get a sense of who you are and how you're going to work together, I think was really important when you all had your retreat last year. So she suggested maybe it was just a time to kind of touch base again, see how things are going, really be thinking about, you know, what was helpful last year, what you wish you'd known with the benefit of hindsight, which of course is 2020, and thinking about what you'd still like to know more about. My role at the School of Government is to work in the public leadership group. So I'm sort of a rare bird. I'm not an attorney, and I'm not the PhD. I consider myself sort of the bridge people, and by that I mean in a couple of different ways. I do a lot of work over the 15 years I've been with the school in looking at the ways various sectors work together. Originally my work was centered around nonprofits and government relationships, and it occurred to me that I think that's the last time it was in the Renaissance, was doing a workshop around a local government and nonprofit relationships, because they are so much the yin and the yang of each other, but their focus is slightly different. But what they could do together is so much stronger than what they could do apart. So for a couple of years we did quite a bit of research and writing about those kinds of relationships, and some teaching at the School of Government. Sort of as a three-legged stool. We do advising, we do teaching, and we do research. Well, it's applied research, but yeah. So that's kind of the other leg of that. When I say bridge people, it's not just bridging sectors, but it's also bridging the school and the research and work in communities. So when we go back and finish the piece about the nonprofit government relations, we did some work, and it really turned out to be pretty well received, and we thought, we're not really thinking big enough. We need to really be thinking about not just government-nonprofit relationships, but how else can we bring in other sectors like the business community, like the faith-based community, like philanthropy, to really solve complex public problems. Because no one sector really has the power, the resources, the ability to affect change in some of these complicated things that we're dealing with. Whether that's closing the achievement gap, ending sexual violence, you pick it, you name it, we really all need to be working together. So our work kind of broadened after that, and we were thinking bigger. So that's part of my background with the school. In the last couple of years, the school did a strategic planning process, and one of the things that kind of rose to the top was this notion of strategic public leadership, and that is the initiative that I direct now. And when I say that, I'm going to talk a little bit about this with the slides, because, it's what I know, and I think it's important. But when we talk about strategic public leadership, we're not just talking about strategic planning, we're really talking about the leadership and developing the capacity to be able to work a plan to its fullest. So when we talk about it, it's around strategic planning, but it's also how a community can benefit, how an organization can benefit, how they use their plans to really move their vision forward. Okay. So that is a lot of the work that I do now when I'm doing teaching or whatever. So I do spend a lot of time working with groups in communities. So in that sense, I take what we know at the school and try and connect people or bring it out. So I'm not the legal expert. That would have been somebody else. But I do a lot of work with groups, and so I have a sense of how groups do work together well or don't work together well, and what they need to be thinking about, particularly with regard to the strategic lens. And so that's a long way to say, that's why I'm here, because I work in those kinds of areas. And I've had a chance to speak with at least 3 of you about kind of what you think the things are that you'd like to get out of this time together today. And so I'll talk about those with the objectives. One thing I want to acknowledge up front is that I asked you all, I sent out a link to the change style indicator, which you all actually had completed last year, but it was a paper copy. And so one of the benefits that you were missing out because you had the paper copy was an online version then would be the Discovery Learning, which is the vendor for this instrument, will run a group report, which really I think would be very, very helpful thinking about as a group, what are your strengths, what are your blind spots, kind of what is your perspective about change, because that's pretty much a constant, wouldn't you say? Dealing and managing with change. And so that change style preference really is an opportunity for you to think more intentionally about your own personal preferences for dealing with change, but also how you can benefit from working with others to get a complete picture of what you're going to need to do to face change. We don't have all of those complete, so I've taken it off the agenda. So I will ask you though if, and I'll send you yet another reminder. Sorry, sort of a pain in your side, but I'd like to go ahead and get that complete so we can go ahead and run that and provide that to you all, and I think it can be really useful for you.
That's coming directly from you.
So that is a good question.
Because we get a lot of emails, a lot of stuff. And sometimes I hit delete a little quickly.
Okay. So it actually is an email generated by Discovery Learning, but it's on my behalf. I actually set it up. So I can monitor to see who didn't answer, didn't respond. I'm happy to do that at a break and kind of take a look and see so that we can catch it if it's gone to a spam folder or something like that. Again, it wasn't sort of the main focus, so I'm cool putting it aside because we'll have to at this point. But what I did want to do is sort of spend some time with you all thinking about what is your strategic vision? Where do you see this board to work? What is the vision you have for your community? What is your role in driving that vision? And what are the things that you'll have to really work on and focus on in order to create that and craft that vision? We won't, in this time, we have other things we want to work on as well, have a chance to really sort of develop. My hope would be we might actually have some goal areas that we would look at, but we won't be having a specific list of tasks and actions and prioritize, et cetera. But a sense of that, I think, would be really important for you all. In speaking with a few folks, you've talked about sort of the things that you thought were your priorities for the last year or so. But what are the next set of priorities, and is there a corporate understanding about where you want to go? So that's part of what I hope we can do, particularly this morning, is talking with one another and thinking about what's the vision, what would need to change, where do we want to spend our time and energy. And I do have a little bit of groundwork I want to lay before we get to the conversation. Probably shifting gears, my sense is that might take us into lunch, maybe a little bit after lunch. But just as important as what you want to get done is working together to get it done. And so not just, so the focus, I think, is always sort of two-pronged, thinking about ways that you all as a board can strengthen yourselves to work in the way that you work effectively, so that you can actually get the work done that you'd like to get done. So we're going to spend some time in conversation about that, and I call them operating principles, thinking about, and on your agenda, the question that I put, and I'd like for you to just kind of ponder is, what's the best local hangout? Well, there's so many fabulous local, not the best, that's a loaded question. On any given Friday night, where are you likely to be? Pretend you're going out. Downtown. Out. All right, say you're at the Friday night football game. Okay, that's a safe one. So you're at the Friday night football game and you're sitting in the bleachers and you're listening to these folks in front of you talking about that Board of Commissioners. What is it that you want to hear them say about the way that you all behave and act as a county Board of Commissioners? So that's kind of a prompt for that discussion, which I think, I don't think you had a conversation like that last year, did you? I had a chance to kind of look through, but I wasn't here, so I don't know. But it appeared to me there was a lot thrown at you last year. There was a lot of stuff. This year, I really want the conversation to be in the room, because now you know a little bit more than you did before, and you really have some good examples to kind of pick apart and say, we really could have done this, and this in that situation and been much more effective. So you've got some real meaty examples, and I would encourage you all to be honest and be specific when you get to those conversations. It's the only way you're really going to have a sense of what can we do better. And then finally, throughout today, I hope that there's sort of an opportunity to gain some greater clarity around particular things. You don't have a chance to sit around and have these kind of conversations very often. And so what are the things that you really would like to know more about or get straight on, or ask questions of staff, key staff are here as resources, and also to be involved in these conversations. So it may not be that we get all the answers today. Very likely we will have a list of things. In fact, I've already got one started sort of important, but not for today. So things that, but what you could really be doing is kind of building your list of what I want more of and what I need to know more about, or what we want to work on. So those are the objectives today, kind of loosely covered. Is that what you thought you were here to talk about?
Sure.
Yeah. More or less. Anything else that we thought, oh man, we really want to get to that, and we haven't mentioned? Well, the other thing about today is we're flexible. As I said, this is your time. So if there's something else, this is a big challenge as a facilitator, is to let the conversation go long enough so that everybody's kind of clear about what you're talking about, but not so long that it's not productive, or that it's not focused, or that it's not on topic. So there might be occasions when I don't know what you're talking about, and I might say, how is this related to what we're supposed to be discussing? So I might ask you a lot of obnoxious questions today, but they're because I don't know sometimes.
We're good with that. We're good with that.
Obnoxious questions? Okay, good. But so we can be flexible in the day is the other thing. I told somebody the other day, when I first started doing facilitation, I was working in a county that shall not be named. But I walked in with this agenda and I said, is this what you want to talk about? No, not at all. We literally took the thing, balled it up, threw it out, and went where we needed to go. And so I actually am, you know, my knees are flexed, we could do anything. It's your time. So I want to make sure that you're comfortable and that you use it in a way that's productive for you. All right, so brief set of introductions. This is just helpful. I've heard some of this, but it's always really helpful, kind of, for me anyway, to put it in the room. Who are you? How long have you lived here? Residency is a loaded question. How long have you lived here? What is your tenure on the board? And what's one thing in the last year that's really made you proud? And it could be something that you did here at work. It could be something, you know, it could be the baseball championship. I don't know what it is. But what's one thing that's made you really proud in the last year? And then the other question is there one particular thing that you really would like to have clarity on, either today or in future meetings? So that's, and I hate to have my back to the group, but since I'd like to make a record of this, because that's the other thing I always usually tend to forget, is that I will provide you with some thematic notes from this. You know, this could be helpful for you all. So I am going to be taking some notes, and so I have to have my back to do that. And the camera too, which is always kind of nerve-wracking. So I don't care how we start. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Thank you.
I'm Ellen Frost. I've lived here since 1995. I'm a small business owner in Black Mountain, and I just took my first term on the board. And we've accomplished a lot of things, but probably what I'm the most proud about is that I'm in the service business myself, and when we can specifically serve the community, it may not make a big headline, but so, you know, we've done some, you know, headline things, which has been great. But I remember, I think it was in March, some folks wrote to me about a bridge that DOT had said it could no longer carry a school bus. And so suddenly this whole neighborhood was in peril for how to get their kids to the school bus. And so I was able to, at Wanda's direction, email John Creighton, who's not here, but it's great. And he got all the right people together, and in 2 weeks, that bridge was redone. The kids were getting to school, and it was very proud because to me, we are people of service, and that's the biggest thing we can do is serve the needs of our community. So that was a great feeling, and you know, to this day, people write, and we have just great resources that we can say. And I mean, I can't do it because I don't know about bridges. I don't know, and there's not enough time to learn everything. But to have this ability,
But you're supposed to have that down right now.
right? So that you know, there's a lot of crime in a little town in Swannanoa, and we're working on getting that addressed. But again, it's the ability to have all these resources, and the president said, you know, ordinary people can do extraordinary things, and I think that's what we do. One thing I didn't carry on. Yeah, we were district elections. Some of us like them, some of us don't. They're here, but I think the biggest thing I want clarity about is we're all Buncombe County Commissioners. We all represent the whole county, and I think as soon as someone says my district, we get like Congress. And so if we could figure out a good way to think of ourselves in a balloon looking down and representing this whole county.
I don't know how to put that exactly. It is by nature of the district. I mean, it is, you all are elected with that, for that big picture, but yet it's a balancing act, I guess, is what I was going to write down. It's the balance between thinking provincially around the district and yet your responsibility is as the whole. So it is a balancing act for sure. Thank you, Ellen. Oh, may I use first names?
No, absolutely not. We are very formal here.
It's going to be hard enough for me to remember first names.
We could wear our name tags, it'd be easier.
No, we're good with first names or hey you.
Oh, I wouldn't do that. Thank you, Ellen.
I guess I'll be done next. Went the residency, I was born here, tenure on the board, this is my first term. One of the things we're proud of in the community, go back to what Ms. Ellen was talking about in terms of community. I feel like in terms of the districts, at least I feel like I, to the best of my ability, fulfill the role as a commissioner in the district and a commissioner at large. As a native, Buncombe County is my home. Asheville is my place of birth, so it's all tied together for me. But one of the things I think that I'm very proud of is, in terms of the districts, is people out in the rural community where I live and rural community north of where I live, they like feeling they have their representative. And I put my cell number out there. They have someone they know personally. They can call, and they like that. And even people out of my district, if they call, I don't ask which district you're in when they call, but I make a point, give them my cell number, let them contact me whenever, and encourage them. And I take those calls. Even at dinner sometimes I would take them. I had one Friday evening. There was just a constituent in my district that mainly just wanted to talk. And so it's a simple thing that I can do, but a very important thing that they have somebody that's listening to them. And as far as clarity, I'm here to see where it goes. So.
No one thing in particular?
Not in particular. I don't know hear what the rest of the commissioners have to say and work toward a common goal.
Good morning. Joe Belcher, I've been here since January of 1980 and moved from one set of mountains in West Virginia to another set of mountains and love this area, love the mountain people, love what they stand for, and I'm honored to be able to represent them in the whole county as well as the district. What I'm most proud of is a school that is in Inca that will be happening as a result of knowing the needs in that area, and people coming to you and some in a more direct way, some in a more compassionate way, and it's ENKA. It's okay. You got it.
Wow,
Right.
okay, ENKA.
Yes, ma'am, no problem. So, one of the reasons I'm really excited about it is because I have a grandson that's 7 years old that, will probably have the opportunity to be able to attend that school. So that, personally, that gets you really jazzed up. I mean, that's very exciting to me, but
What does this location of the school mean? What does it mean? What's the meaning behind it for you?
the meaning behind the school is that it fixes a problem where the middle school, terribly overcrowded, traffic issues, safety issues. Both of my kids went to that school. And so when we heard the need about it, Mr. King and I went and was actually able, what's really cool about it is we were actually able to help. And the board, of course, supported it. And I didn't have any doubt that they wouldn't. And because of the way all of the people on board think when it comes to children, when it comes to things like that. And, but, you know, when we went, they needed property. And we were able to find them property and help get the property at a good deal. And so I'm really pleased with that. There's a lot of other things that we've been able to do, but that just sticks out in my mind and probably always will. I've been a commissioner since December. And I think that what I would want to get clarity on today, I don't know if you can help with, you know, procedural things, or if you can help with, you know, we do a lot of appointments to boards and things like that. And to me, that's been it's been interesting in trying to decide as a group and as an individual, you know, who's going to be on those boards, how they're going to serve, you know, how to have good representation, and you know how you do that. And it's been kind of a tough part of, I think, the first year. Other than, you know, having, you know, it's interesting when we have disagreements here. Our disagreements are based on my opinion, how I want to try to represent my constituents. But when we vote, we leave the room, and we're fine. And we get into, you know, a lot of whatever, you know, that I think that, I remember saying this before, and I'll say this and shut up, is that you don't ever, it's hard to give you the mic, but anyhow, I said that one of the things that I really, really want to do was to restore confidence in leadership. Not that leadership, as far as the board, was broken. I'm just saying in general leadership, everywhere, people look to us and catch us in both angles or whatever it is. And I am pleased with, there's a lot more people that come up to you and say, I appreciate what you're doing. There's only been a handful that's going, oh, you're one of them. And that's helpful to me. As a new commissioner, I'll just be straight up with, you know, the group. That's helpful to me. Because I know they care about what they're doing, I do too. So it's helpful when you get encouragement from them. It really is. You don't have to have it to do the job, but it's kind of nice.
Here you are in a job where, yes, it's hard to know, you know, it's like the job description's pretty darn vague. The opportunity for guidance is pretty vague. The, you know, opportunity for specific feedback about how well you did, it's kind of out there too. So, yeah, it's kind of wide open, so hearing that. So I'm hearing sort of this confidence in leadership. There are plenty of examples, unfortunately, where we don't see that. And so I've always thought that at the local level that is where the rubber meets the road, and that this is where, you know, you live with these people, you work with these people on behalf of your community, that it doesn't need to be that way here. In your own community, you have the opportunity to really to be strong leaders. Thank you, Joe. David?
Okay, I'm David Gant. I moved here right after I took the bar exam in 1981, so I've been here 33 years. I've been on the board for 17 years. And as far as the one thing I'm the most proud of, it's the way this board has talked to each other. And I think people, we don't always agree, but I think there's been a real effort for everybody to know what's going on. So there's a conscious effort to, I think, be a team, or at least be the confidence and leadership that Joe's talking about. I think everybody's agreed that's a better way to do, particularly when we look at Congress and some folks that maybe aren't doing that or even trying to do that. So I'm pleased everybody's trying to do that. And as a result of that, the specific one thing I'm the most proud of is the job creations, in particular General Electric. We just got a we not only got jobs to come here, we saved a lot of jobs. And I just remember going to the plants and talking to the people and looking at the faces of the people that knew they were gonna have a job tomorrow because we ended up some money and we did some things. And Wanda Green and John Creighton did a brilliant swap, one of the, in my 17 years, maybe the most crafty setup to make this happen. Buying property, swapping property. And so I just think everybody kind of, to get that, and then the reward is we're going to have really good jobs and good growth, which is what people want, more opportunity for the people we represent. So to me, that was the best. The thing I'd like to get clarity on today is the other commissioners' views and how they process promises, commitments to money, projects, so that I can better understand some situations we get in where people feel they have the commission support to do things that maybe 4 more commissioners don't agree with. And so I think maybe the right down would be understanding of philosophies of promise and commitments by the board members. Because I don't think I have that down very good at all.
I think I'm gonna ask you to make sure that when we get to the point that you say a little bit more about what that means to you.
Okay.
Because right now I'm still not quite clear, and I'm not sure others are either, so.
An example would be if I really want a project, and I say, we'll do that. And as a commissioner, they say, well, the Commissioner Gant said we'd do that, so we're gonna do it. He wouldn't say it, their perception might be that he wouldn't have said that if they're not gonna do that. But it might be just me saying, I would really like to do it personally versus the board. And as chairman, it's a little bit harder. So I have to be more careful, but I just want everybody to be on the same page about when we do these things, what the ramifications are for the other commissioners, particularly ones that maybe didn't make that commitment or don't want to make that commitment, money or projects.
All right. So sort of when is a commitment, and when is it a personal statement of, and when is it a corporate statement?
Yes, that might be a better way. Individual versus commission commitments.
So, you didn't hire me because of my writing, I'm sorry. And also, I sort of do these show hands, so that's BOCC for me, that's Board of County Commissioners. So.
BOCO. BOCO?
Boku, I don't know,
BOCO. Instead of BOCO.
It's almost like both up, like you. Yeah. See, we do.
And you know, if I would be in the wrong business if I didn't know how to make a good acronym, so.
Right.
Holly Jones arrived in 1996 to be the executive director of the YWCA, currently work for the YWCA USA. Most proud of the vote to give the same-sex benefits to our citizens, as well as the non-discrimination policy. And that was really important to me, and I'm very proud of that. In terms of clarity, I think the thing that would be most helpful for me is to understand where the people's voice is received, and when how that folds into democracy in terms of their role in interfacing with us, giving us their opinions, and that's been a real mixed message for me. I have a predisposition that we will make the best decisions when we are, hearing from not just the people that agree with us and think, we're the cat's meow, but also the people that, push us and have issues. I think that's how we get better. And I think that's how we're open to, you talked about change, I think that's how we need to be open to change. And they have an important, vital role, and I think lots of times they know more than we do. So, but that would be helpful for me.
So I've written role of all citizens to influence the board's actions and direction. So,
My name's Mike Fryer. I've been here since January 1963, 50 years. Coming on this board has been a different for me. Plus, I have a good group of people that stand behind me. I do have cancer. And, as you notice my hair now.
It's all the look these days.
Anyway, what I've done, I think, since I've been here is, it's probably a little controversial, but it works in my own way. I was not for AV Tech getting the referendum, but once they won it, I was for AV Tech getting what they needed. So, Mr. Creighton and Ms. Rain and the people that had to deal with the people at AV Tech, I think we got it pretty well worked out with our representatives that they could actually build a building in a form that the county understood, because Creighton and our people understood that. So I worked hard with our representatives to try to make sure that happened. And so that has happened. And the other things, I want to try to get the numbers down so the taxpayers are not stuck for 17 years with a bill on AV Tech on quarter cent sales tax, which that's fine, let everybody understands where I'm at. Talk to people in different areas. It don't matter if they're in my district. We have to try to help people. That's why we're voted in. I'm a person that the one thing that I do believe and I'm not apologize for is I want to figure out how to make a dollar. I want to figure out how to save a dollar. And the main thing is I have to listen to my constituents. Some things that happen, and there's going to be things that's been fixed. And we have great staff. Without our great staff, there's 4 of us here that's got 8 months into this, and without them, we honestly wouldn't know which way to go without the guidance. So people say we're bosses. No, we got people that's got 30 years experience. You have to listen to them. And that's where I'm going to be. I may disagree with some of my members on the council here, but we'll walk down that aisle after the vote, as Joe said, and we'll go have dinner, we'll talk about it and forget about it. But I just want to help. I just want to help. And as long as I'm here, that's, I don't need credit for a whole lot of things. I do enjoy, you know, it is easier on Mr. Creighton and him as far as the AV Tech thing. And I don't know what else to say, except that's the best I can do for a little while.
Is there anything in particular that you'd like greater clarity about?
Say that one more time.
Is there anything in particular that you'd like greater clarity about?
Or I think I have an understanding. That's why I said I go back to the staff. I got the cat here. Any of the people in this room. And they can bring me around. And then David, I have to go there every now and then. And even Holly, they've been here. Holly's 4 years, or 5 now. David's 17. So, you know, if I got questions, I don't mind asking. And the clarity is, I got elected. And the people, it isn't they're my employees. That's the clarity that I understand.
Thank you. Andy?
Well, I've been to school board. I was born here, which means I've been here almost 54 years. Been a county employee for 31 years. Probably what I'm most proud of is, I figured Commissioner Fry's opportunity to work for the citizens. And I think sometimes what gets lost in the discussion from a staff perspective is we run a $500 million industry business every day that has significant impacts on the economy and the long, it impacts our community at every level, and that's probably what I'm most proud of. What I want to get clarity on is I think staff's always looking for clarity on if we're providing what commissioners need via the county manager, or how we can better support them in reaching their goals.
I'm probably the only person in the room who thinks it's 900 degrees in here, but.
No, I'm in.
I grew up in Haywood County, which is about 30 miles to the west of here. I came to Buncombe in '94 and then became the manager in '97. And I'm a lot like Mandy. What I'm really proud of is the impact we have on lives quietly every day and in real serious ways. I'm also really proud of having we have a really good staff that knows the resources, knows the connections in the community, so when a problem does come up, we can, for the most part, connect the dots and help get to solution on a lot of things. And for me, what I'd like to have clarity on is better clarity on how the board members want to be, the information they need and the way they want us to communicate when there's total agreement, when there's disagreement on the board. I think we have to know that we're all on the same page, even if there's different opinions about things.
So how to communicate with them when there's agreement or non-agreement?
Yeah, just to keep that line of communication.
And do you mean physically how they want to get their information?
No, I mean really that we keep talking about things when there's issues that come up, and
So is it how to communicate or how much to communicate or how to get them to communicate?
it's not the vehicle.
I will tell you right now, I would like to just ban this word communication because
Okay.
it's so general that it's not, sometimes it's like, well, what do you mean?
Well, I don't mean the vehicle. I mean, I just want us to be talking to one another when things are great and when things are in a state of flux or when we're trying to make decisions.
So I'm hearing open lines under all conditions?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm actually from Transylvania County, but I've been here since I was 10, so that's 40 years. This is scary. And I've been here since 1983
In your role?
in my role.
83?
83. It's scary. One thing I'm most proud of, I guess, I'm proud that they haven't all killed each other. Because district elections and staggered terms is a big deal. Looking over the history of the county, that's a big, big change for this county. So the fact that they've gone along as well as they have is amazing, and I'm very proud of that. Hasn't been very smooth, but like I said, they haven't killed each other, and they can get along. They do still talk, and they do still work things out, and I think that's a big achievement. And I'm kind of with Wanda and with Mandy on clarity, and I won't use your communication word so you won't get me. But there is that's something that we're always working on. How to know how to better serve you and meet the needs, to anticipate what you're going to need before you have to ask for it, is something that we're always trying to do better. And so I would love some clarity on what we're doing wrong or what we may be doing right and need to do more of.
Okay.
I am Donna Clark, and I live in Haywood County, but I can tell you that I love Buncombe County. And, we shop, we eat, I spend a lot of time here. But we run a family farm. My husband works in the other direction, so they have graciously allowed me to live there. I have been here since 2000. 13 going on 14 years. I am most proud that I get to work in this community, that I get to work for this organization.
Why is that?
We do good things. And as a finance person, I don't directly work with the citizen, but I do think that we play, our department plays a role in making their lives better and supporting those that do.
That's a pretty tall order, better lives. Any in particular, yes, I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to do this too often. Do you hear those needs? Is there anything in particular that you'd like more clarity about?
Just are we doing what this board needs, supporting them to do what they need to give them the information they need, and like Kathy said, know what they need before they even have to ask for it, to make their jobs easier. And we do know it's a tough job. I'm not sure what they want, but.
Can I add one thing? As I was thinking about it, I'm a control freak, and I think maybe some of us would say that they were too. And I think that for me, the biggest challenge is letting go and having faith that these are experts and they know what they're doing. And recently, I had a test of that night. I don't want to speak in specifics because it was a really tragic situation, but I have a boarding kennel and I do a lot of animal welfare. So I've been taking care of a dog who, young owner, was a victim of the most tragic circumstances. And so the control part of me wants to jump in and say, where's the dog going to end up? Where's, this child, all this stuff. And I just have to say, you know what? I have faith. These are experts. I know about dogs. I don't know that all about being grandmother. I don't know about the other stuff, which is letting go and not interfere in the day-to-day what they know how to do best. And I think that's, and everything happens for things that are thrown at you for a reason, and learning from it.
Yeah, that sort of balancing for someone that is used to being the problem solver. I'm a victim of this myself. You want to do it. You want to get it done. You want to fix it. You want to make it right. And I will not ever forget my daughter. I have two daughters. One is phenomenally emotionally intelligent, and I am not. And so she was a teenager, and she said to me, she's telling me something, and I'm in the middle of trying to fix it for her. And she says, "Mom, I just need you to listen." And that was a huge wake-up call to me, and I had to now go, oh, she comes to me, what is it that you want me to do? Because there's a level of fixing, getting the right people in the right mix and the right combination and the right confluence. That's one way to do it. You don't have to be in there up to your knees all the time. And so sometimes remembering that, for me anyway, is very helpful to go, what's my role here? What do I need to be doing? And maybe that's what you're, similar to what you're speaking about.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Because I think, in fairness to staff, we can say, I want Angles, the grocery store, to switch to paper bags, and I want you to get that done. And so, so all of a sudden they're like, in this, well, what do I do here? What, this Commissioner Smith is saying, what do I do? And so it puts them in that's taking them away from their daily jobs. So I think that would be a good thing if we could work on that, like, don't send people down bunny trails.
So again, that's a good example of, that might be something that's just stuck in your craw and you'd like to have done. For the staff perspective, I don't know how they would answer it. To me, it would seem that a discussion about what your priorities might be and going clean and green, for instance, if that's something you want to make sure is one of your priorities or your strategic directions, that might be something that would fall up underneath that. But if it doesn't rise to the level of a priority for you all, then just because you'd like to have that happen doesn't mean that you're going to spend all of your staff time figuring out how to do that. So hopefully this discussion will add some clarity for staff in terms of kind of where you want to head and what your vision is. I'm not certain we're going to get to all of this, but I think we have a good list, and I want to kind of keep coming back to this to see throughout the day if we're getting there. I heard clearly from all staff folks, we really want to have some sense of what's working well out of the ways that we do things and what changes could be beneficial. So we might actually have a straight up conversation about that one that I hadn't necessarily planned on. Okay. And we also have other folks in the room that I'd like to acknowledge are here. Is that all right?
Sure.
Do you mind introducing yourself?
Oh, yeah, Mike Clemens, CBO.
You don't know what that stands
Council of Independent Business Owners.
I told them already, so I have 3 things I want to come back and buy.
And lots of money.
Yeah. And what is it that's happened in the last year that you're most proud of?
With the commissioners,
for.
Just in general, in the community?
I'm with Mr. Belcher on the school in the Inca district. I was on the PTA, president, and all that, out of the elementary. The biggest thing we wanted, and that was back early 90s, that school. Now, it could have been a new middle school, but I'm most proud of that. Because we sometimes in that district, now, I'm going to talk districts, and we sometimes get shoved away. And it's a big problem there. No, I'm not going to say.
But the fact that you were able to alleviate the things that were concerns around the crowding, traffic, and safety makes you proud.
I'm Jake Frankel. I'm a reporter with the Mountain Express, and I'm not sure what I'm most proud of. I have a question I'd like to see clarity on. I'd like to see clarity if it's okay if I have a bagel. I've been watching you guys. I'm like, rolling my eyes.
Seems the least we can do, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Jerry.
Yes, ma'am. I've been out of the room, so I don't know the question.
I'm sorry. So I just sort of, who are you and what are you most proud of in the last year or so that?
You got to explain who you are like we did.
Oh, my goodness.
Up there.
Well, maybe the commissioners do that better. I'm an advocate for special needs children, have been for 26 years, and most of my advocacy has been around children issues. And I got into government because of that, because of the funding issues, and I learned how government worked and how it was connected, and that makes a better advocate. So I probably know most or more than most of the commissioners in government, and not saying that braggingly, it's just I've been around here for so long that I'm just part of it. So I'm interested in knowing what the new things are and how we can connect. But lots of good things happening, I think.
Well, and I wanted to just acknowledge your presence and as observers in the room. Thank you. It's helpful for me too. So, all right. What next? So I actually have a little list of important but not for today that I think I'm going to put up later. I'm going to use this list too. This is the disadvantage of being a single person here facilitating without another person on top of Anna White to work with. I don't want to spend much time on these discussion guidelines, but because it sounds like I've spent a lot of time talking, but I really think they're important, and so I do want to highlight a couple of things. First of all, I've given you sort of a full list in the handout agenda, these discussion guidelines, and I can tell you time and time again, I've seen instances where they really do make a difference in terms of what kind of level of understanding you have in your room or in your conversations. And that's really the major point in having this, is not to control the conversations in any particular way, but to make sure that you all have the benefit of an understanding of another person's point of view. And so these have been really helpful in my experience, and research shows that that you'll have a better conversation, greater understanding, and hopefully better decisions on something like this. So I don't know how many of you got particular discussion guidelines that you use, not procedural things, but just kind of rules of thumb that you use in conversations. Ellen? Like, for instance, what might one of those be?
I think, for me, to be honest, I've been a lifelong Democrat. I was raised by Democrats in 1960. I didn't know what a Nixon was, but I knew you didn't say it in the House. And I've had Republican customers and all that, but I've never really been friends, I have to say, with Republicans before. And it's really changed how I look at life, and I've learned really what to really push what we can agree on, and not mention things that we have no control over, that's just going to divide us. That's not why we're elected. So for me, it's really being cognizant of not wearing a Democrat on my heart, of instead being an elected official with responsibilities for a lot of people, and not letting partisan silliness get in the way to keep moving forward. Because really, basically, the only thing we've done that is a domestic partner benefit, and I'm very, very proud of that. But I think respecting people and not throwing stuff out that's going to be disparaging because we're from different parties. And that's always something that I'm very conscious of. Because I think if you don't do that and don't think about that, then you just have conversation enders. And I have to say that, like Mike and I, we were on opposite sides of an issue, and we knew we were at opposite sides. There was about 35 people that came and spoke in public comment. We voted, it was over with, and we laughed and hoped. And, I think that's really important for me to be able to focus on what's interesting, what our interests are in that position.
And that's exactly where I was going to go. That, to me, seems an example of what is it that you want to actually have happen, not a position which is on this or on that. Or quite frankly, a vote is a position. It's a yes or a no. And so when you're in a meeting, and that's all you have to get to say pretty much about it, there's not a lot of understanding. So, I'd encourage you all, particularly in these conversations, but in the conversations outside of this room too, is what is it that you want to have happen here? What is it that you want to see? What is it that you're driving for? And so you might just start peeling the onion back and kind of asking that kind of question. That's a really good discussion guideline.
And to give credit to Joe, I tend to be kind of matter of fact when I speak sometimes. And early on, he said, when you said that hurt my feelings. And that was so good that he said that, because it made us relate much better to each other.
And those stylistic differences can come out with these discussions as well. I mean, so he checked an assumption. Well, actually, that's not really checking an assumption. He's just honest with you.
Right.
That's sharing all relevant information. So that doesn't mean you have to share everything, but it does mean that there's something that's going to be significant to influence the conversation, influence the decision. You need to put it in the room. And if Joe held on to that, he might have like that might have been all he thought about then for that meeting, or even that. Whatever.
And I'm so grateful that he did that, because we have a strong connection, and even though there are things we don't agree on, but because from person to person, we have that, and I think we have a great foundation, all of us, to go forward, because we're really trying hard not to trip each other up or to be destructive, to take away from what the end goal is.
Because when you look at the two of us, and you look at personal background, personal voting records, we are totally and completely opposites. So as a group, as individuals, you recognize that, because that's a way, you know, that you treat people right. You have good discussions. If you disagree, you very clearly and politely say that you do. Then you go to the next subject. And so if you're not going to be able to, if you don't well on that subject, because I'm not trying to convince her, you know, I was on the other side of the domestic partners issue for my reasons and for my constituents' reasons. But once there are things that you have to be able to get done, and there are things that you I mean, it did bother me. It did. And I think that, you know, one of the things I was thought of when she was talking is, wouldn't it be, I don't know how you can, wouldn't it be nice to be able to have these kind of discussions to some extent, in the boardroom? To be able to actually talk through things more deeply without, I mean, you haven't heard this board be ugly to each other. You know, that has happened in other areas. That's happened in other areas of government. You know, we're not going to shout at each other. We're not going to do that. We're not going to cross those lines. I don't see anybody doing that. And it'd be nice to be open, even and not disagree, and not respectfully disagree, and then just go on.
One of the things that I heard that was key to what you said was share your reasoning. So in other words, you could say, I don't agree with that, and here's why I don't agree with that. This is why I hold this viewpoint, and I'd like for you to understand my viewpoint. I mean, that's a couple more sentences, but it's a whole lot more helpful than I don't see it that way, or no.
Or you're wrong.
Or yeah.
You're wrong, I'm right.
Well, I often wish the world were black and white, but to me it's gray. And so how do I understand? Why would I understand? Why do you think I'm wrong? Help me understand your point of view. So, you know, those are examples of other kinds of discussion guidelines that are up there, which is balancing advocacy. I'd like for you to understand my viewpoint, and here's why I hold the viewpoint, and it's important to me, and here's what I'd like to have happen. But Ellen, what is your view on this? Kathy, how do you feel about this? You know, inviting that conversation, just simply advocating and then just simply asking other people, Mike, tell me what you think.
Well, and I agree 100%, because we do have to go to Kathy and Mandy and Wanda, Ellen, you know, we talk about it frequently because we have a district. You know, we all have districts. Mine and hers, so it happens to be two, and we try to do things together. Whether we're different parties, but we do try to do things together. David, I think, when I first got seated, I went to David's office and we had a discussion. But when we got through with the discussion, it was good. He thought I didn't like him, but it's never ever been. I mean, I was kind of a pain or thorn or whatever you want to call it in their class before I was ever elected, because I had a whole lot more. It's like Joe says, we can't say a whole lot where we're at. Well, I had a whole lot more fun, and I told David this when I was eating the other night, when I was on the other side of the podium looking at him. And, you know, so, but it's worked out. We walked out of that office that day. Since that point, he understands who I am, I understand who he is. And that's not going to change. You know, no matter how the votes are, in any of us, you know, I'm not going to get mad because my wife don't agree with me all the time. Probably not most of the time, but I'm going to respect all six of the members of this board. And I'm going to really respect the people that guide us through. You know, there's too many years of responsibility here, and I'm going to ask questions, and sometimes I'm probably going to be wrong in the questions that I ask, but I respect David again a lot. Holly, and I think we've all went through things. I brought issues forward, but we're going to walk forward. It's a new day, and we all have to learn from the process.
I have a confession to make. I'm the product of a bipartisan marriage. My mother was a Republican, my father was a Democrat. So I didn't grow up with this divide between parties as such. And because they were both my parents, loved both of them. And the reality was, they wanted the same thing out of life. That, you know, they had different politics, but they wanted a home, they wanted to educate their children, there was no difference in the two. And so I didn't grow up with that. I grew up with a healthy respect for people. And what Democrats and Republicans are, they're your neighbors, they're people next door. They're all our constituents. And I don't care whether you're Democratic or Republican. We ultimately want the same thing. The question is how much of the same thing? How much will we pay for the same thing? How do we get there? And as long as we're working together as a board, I think we kind of get there. It's just working out the details and what will be hopefully acceptable to the majority. In both of those groups, Democrats and Republicans, you have the extremes trying to pull them apart. I mean, that's a huge problem we have in this country today. But most of the people I talk to live in the middle. They're somewhat centrist. They may be Democrat or Republican. They're somewhere around that middle ground. And I think that's what I try to strive for, is where do we make that happy balance that is best for the community. And as far as Chairman Gant, too, he has been a great help to me, not because he's a Democrat, but because he's David Gant. He's a good person. And I don't care what his politics is. He came to me, when all of us, I guess, when we got on the board, said, what can I do to help you be successful? And he has fulfilled that. He's followed through with that. And we've gotten to be, I think, very much a cooperative board, work together. There are sometimes votes come out differently, but that's to be expected. The last thing I want is gridlock, like in some of the other legislative groups throughout the
You
country.
can't afford to do that in your community.
No, we are a community, and I think that's the difference. We're a very small group and easy to come. It's easier for a small group to come together anytime than a large group. And as far as staff, we do have a great staff. I was in a meeting yesterday, and I just told them as far as questions about numbers and figures, and I said, staff is good with it, I'm good with it. Because, quite frankly, I'm not a detail person, and it's dangerous to let commissioners get too deep in the numbers and get mucking around on the professional side of it. If you don't trust your staff, then that's one thing, but I trust these people immensely.
So you all talked about this in a sort of a political realm, a party affiliation, but it could be anything else that might set you apart. And it could be a longtime resident versus a new resident. It could be a very independent thinker versus a more organizationally driven thinking. It could be any number of things that could potentially lead to, I don't understand. So these discussion guidelines are simply ways that I think have been effective to sort of put understanding in the room. The other one I'm going to mention before we go too far is this agree on what important words mean. So it's up there in a quote because when I'm working with a group and I hear a couple of words and I'm like, we got to go back to that. Because my guess is there's 5 or 6 or 7 different understandings about what that word actually means. My favorite one working with political elected officials is fiscally responsible. We want to be fiscally responsible. My guess is that we would have a variety of conversations about what that word means. So that's one of them, for instance. Collaboration is another one. We all think that's a great thing. Is it a great thing? What do we mean by that? What are the ways in which we can work together? Is there something, how do you define collaboration versus something else? So there are a couple of words that are always going to be kind of buzzed. And if you start thinking about it, what do those words actually mean? And if you think that it's important and it's a kind of a fork in the road discussion or decision, ask other people. Well, David, I hear you using this particular word. What does this mean to you? Because here's what it means to me, and I'd like to know. Maybe there are other words you can think of like that. So if I'm working with a group and I hear one, and I'll come back to it, we'll just throw a little quote up there. So you might even see it in the notes. Little quotes like, man, you got to go back and talk about that one. So there are probably going to be words like that. Can you think of anything in particular? Yeah.
Change.
Change.
And, you know, I was thinking of an example of change. You know, if I wanted to remodel a building, you know, I could go in and drop a bomb on that building. But, or I could go in there and I could re-sheetrock this room, I could change this, I could change that. And one of the things that I learned as a commissioner, because I was not active in politics at all, I voted. I was active in, being a father and a husband and church and work and all that. And I felt like in the districts it happened that I could, help and get elected. It did. So the balance of service and change, affecting change. You have those that want you to drop a bomb on them. I'm not a bomb dropper. You have those that want you, but I'm a take this room, sheetrock it, work a little at a time. Now, I have a 4-year term, some have a 2-year term, so there's maybe a little less pressure on me than others on things that they would like to see different. I think when you talk about change, people think of it as, well, negative, something's broken, so that means you're going to have to fix it. And so, people really don't understand, and I'm coming to understand about this position, and I've actually had some conversations with the chairman, because he has done it so long, and also Dr. Grant, regarding, we serve the whole county, and there's a lot out there as far as being obligated to service that this job entails. And it's more than just affecting change. Change is part of it, and change is some things that you want to try to see done for the better. And if you can't get it all the way that you personally feel, then you're going to have to get it as close to that as you can. And being able to do that and how you do it, how quick you do it is a challenge, because during that time, there's no point knowledge, during that time as you're serving, you're going to all these different things. You have people tugging in all these different directions, and you go outside. You don't go, there's things, you go to your district, but you go to, one of the coolest things we did was we had these, what do you call them, the district things, communities, and we went out in different areas, and we all sit there and we listened to everybody from that area. That was one of the coolest things I think that we've done. We hadn't mentioned that, but that really was a big deal that we did. So balancing all that and doing change in a way that that word is just on and all out proportion.
Well, and that actually, so that's kind of brings me back to that change style indicator. And again, I don't have everybody's scores. It's not been the focus. But what you described is, for you, my guess is that you're on the more conservator or a pragmatist side rather than an originator, which would go, I see how this could all be different. I see this vision. I see this holistic change. I think there might have been some on that scale. I can't remember, but. Would be you? So that's another.
I'm two, which I think the only one in here that was close to me was Kathy Hughes.
So that's another dimension where just thinking about the change, you're going to have to be cognizant that not everybody's going to think the way you do. I will not forget listening to the manager in the town of Chapel Hill talk about this community engagement process, and it's all about 10,000 touches. Yeah, we're going to touch 10,000 people and get all this. And I'm thinking, but what are we going to do with all this? How are you going to organize it? How are you going to decide? How are you going to back? And I'm like, and yet when I realized that he is this very strong originator, he sees how all the systems could be different. That is, an originator point of view. So you need all of these points of views to be able to manage change effectively. You're going to have to be thinking about it in your small group dynamics, but also thinking about how to communicate this message. Some of the struggles that you all are talking about, this is indicative of you've been elected because you look like the rest of the community. So others are going to be struggling with these kinds of issues as well. So thinking about how to manage your own group will help you think about how to manage this out into the community as well.
And I think for me, trust is a big, and I know you don't like the word, but we do talk a lot. David and I probably talk while I'm grooming a dog or he's under a horse. Joe and I, we could I bet we could be at odds 20 years from now, and all I have to do is say the word big truck, and we'll both start laughing, because of just shared experiences, and things that have happened. So I think trust is a huge, but you don't start off trusting people, it's just not human nature.
It's not, no, actually, it's like that too. I don't want to spend too much more time on the discussion guidelines, except to say, I'd like for us to pick one or two to kind of practice them today. I might actually, use them and say, well, tell me more about that. I don't understand your reasoning. I actually already did that once. So,
I like that one.
what was that?
We're having an inappropriate sidebar conversation. But anyway, no, it's okay to disagree. I like that one.
Puppies and squirrels.
I'd be worried if you all agreed on everything, because then I would think that you don't actually understand the other points of view in quite the same way, or even understand what you're talking about and what you're trying to get done. I'd be very worried if you agreed on everything. And again, being specific, I think that it's that question about we should clean the garage this weekend. Well, wait a minute. What kind of we is that? Is that a he-we project, a she-we project, or a we-we project? So being more specific can be helpful in terms of getting more clarity on what you're after.
We really should clean the garage this week. We really should.
So I actually would like to shift to thinking about this strategic piece. I hadn't scheduled a break, but I'm wondering if we need a brief little stretch your leg break. Yeah?
Yeah.
Like about 10 minutes? So there's everybody else but me knows where the restrooms are. I do have a facilitator evil eye I'll have to pull out. But now I think I can use my mother voice. So, if you recall, one of the objectives that we laid out this morning was really thinking about exploring your vision for the future and thinking about at least establishing some preliminary strategic priorities. And the reason I think it's important for you to do that is it's absolutely one of the things that you're responsible for. This is a slide, actually your pictures aren't on this other slide, but I did this last night, which I thought was kind of cool. Everybody looks kind of so great. In
Very
their photos.
patriotic.
What a great looking group.
Really nice flag.
Look at Bradley's flag.
But this is a slide from, how many of you all were at Essentials of County Government? Did you play the bottom line, the budget simulation exercise?
Yeah.
This comes right out of that. This slide comes right out of that. And the next one. But this, in a nutshell, I liked it because it's kind of like this is what you do. There's some legal stuff that you got to be paying attention to. Thank goodness you have people to help you stay straight on that. Your job is to think strategically and long term. We've had a lot of discussion about districts. Great, I hear you. And yet, your job is to think holistically and long term. With all of that in mind, but nobody, you have provided some really important critical services and infrastructure that you have this community in such good state of health economically and in other reasons because somebody before you did this work too.
Yeah.
And thought about what's the groundwork that we need to lay to promote the community that we envision. And so I absolutely think that's one of your challenges and one of your responsibilities, to think long-term and strategically. Figure out what the priorities are. It's probably not grocery bags, but yet that could be one particular strategy for a bigger set of priorities. Involving others. Gee, did you know you had to work with all these people the way that you do? It's about relationships at your county level. So much of that, you're working with other elected officials, other groups, school boards. I understand that was a discussion yesterday. Community colleges, the sheriff, you name it. There's an awful lot of other folks that you're going to have to be working with. So that is clearly one of your roles, is to involve others, including the citizens, in your work. And to make sure that stuff gets done the way it's supposed to get done. that notion of ensuring accountability. When I say accountability, I don't mean wrist slapping necessarily. I mean making sure that it's done the way that you thought it was supposed to be done, and if not, why not? So really questioning that. So in essence, these are kind of like, these are big roles that you need to play. So the one I want to focus on today is this one about thinking more strategically. Now, you've been through one budget, and to me, the budget is simply a tool to be able to put your strategic plan in motion. As a new commissioner, how did you know what to vote for with regard to the budget?
Is this a question?
Yeah. It is.
I looked at the budget at more probably than some of the other ones did. I wanted to save the taxpayer because I knew what was going to happen as far as the reval. Once we did that, property go down and the numbers was going to have to go up. What I was looking for is all the savings that we could come up with. And I think in personal, it goes back to the same thing, not mad at anybody, and I don't think anybody should be mad at me. There was areas that there was money put that I couldn't go for, so I ended up having to vote against it.
Why couldn't you go for that?
It was given more, nonprofits are good, but we were given more to the nonprofits than I felt like we should be given at particular times since we were, it goes back to the same thing, the AV Tech side. We're giving them a lot of money, but Buncombe County was giving AV Tech like $8 million, and I went to the screen and I asked the question. We'll give them $8 million, and we've got a board out here that's giving them $80,000, and there's 3 people on the board. Do we need to give them $8 million? So, it goes back to the same thing. There's, I think we saved $2 million that I asked if we could possibly take off that. So that give us help in what the rest of the staff found, but that was 1 cent off the property tax. That back to staff.
So,
But I just, nonprofits are okay, but I think everybody, we all live in a certain world. But when we were $400,000 above, then that made mine where I could not go for it,
so I hear you saying a couple of things, I think. One is that it was really clear to you what your priorities were not. Because, and it may be that so that nonprofit funding, for instance, wasn't a priority for you, and I'm going to assume, and I'm going to check it with you, that one of the reasons that might be true is that you don't feel that they may not provide core services, core county services.
Well, there's a lot of them.
Is that accurate?
Well, no, there's a lot of them that do. I think we all put a number down. And I put a number down. My number was quite a bit lower than some of the other numbers, but there's core things that the county needed. But I had, and it goes back to the same thing. I'm new. I had to go to the staff and say, okay, who do we help? Who don't we need to help this particular county? And that's the way I looked at it. My number was 600,000 below the other number, but we were helping the core. That's, I want to help the core, but there's other things if we could have waited a year, I felt like we'd be a whole lot better off and see where we was going to be.
Okay. So that's an individual response. So you told me how you came at what you could support in the budget and make a vote on. How did others approach that?
I think, again, I have so 2 different things. One, I'm a small business owner. So in my little small world, I know what a budget is. I'm also a huge liberal, but sometimes, you can only work with what you have. So having faith in the numbers and staff, David and I go back to 1999, and he's been there a long time. Holly and I have been dear friends for a long, long time. So having some faith and also what our core goals are. I wish we had done more to work with those partners in the community for the services that they give. But you can only do what you can do to be responsible. I wish you could have given more to fiscal legal, the YW, a lot of non-for-profits that apply great service, but we can only work within our means.
Okay, so again, it's a matter of allocating in some particular way. I guess. So I'm getting there. David, you were going to say something?
I think this is a great example from Mike to Ellen, and what our board's able to do is we have diverse views, and my favorite word that I've picked up since being on this board is balance. And we try to strive for some kind of a balance. And I think that's what both are alluding to. And that we all have projects we'd like to do or not do, but we've got to figure out what is the balance, what do we have to do. I think we've done that by working to improve some schools, for example, in the city and out of the city as well. These are things. I think saving money, we all want to be good stewards of the money. We want to serve the
You want to
public.
be fiscally responsible.
We want to be fiscally responsible, but that extends beyond just saying, being good stewards sometimes means you take care of your infrastructure, you take care of your core services. That's also being a good steward of the money. Because people expect those things. It's like if my house needs a new roof on it and I fail to put the roof on it because I don't think that's a good investment at this time, and it's damaged from water, that was not being physically responsible. That was actually irresponsible. So it's finding that balance from budget to budget and trying to get there. And believe me, I don't know about the other commissioners that are new, but it's been a real learning experience. And there's so much you come to this, you just don't know. You're trying to balance all of this in your own mind and work through these things. And you do get wrapped up in things, and you get to hurry, and then you're thinking you're doing something. And back to what Chairman Gant said earlier about trying to communicate, I think that is a good thing. I hope we get this worked out because it's real easy to forget. Oh, I need to do this because you're so focused on doing something, and it's not that you're in my case, it's inexperience. And I'm learning, but I'm learning quickly. But it's when you compare my 9 months, whatever it is, 10 months to years of experience, it comes up short at times.
But it's a lot.
It's a lot to learn.
It's huge.
in a
And I
short
guess
time.
that's one of the reasons I'm asking the questions is that I'm hoping that there's a way that you can have a better sense of what you want in your budget. In other words, rather than coming up with my number versus this number, my philosophy, this is how I define my priority as infrastructure, I define it as working with community partners, whatever it is, that if there was a way that you all could have a sense of direction, so that it gives you the discipline to remember what you said you want.
I think for me, when you're running, you're a candidate, and you're posturing as a candidate. When you get here, you have to switch that role from candidate to now you serve everyone. You're no longer the candidate. And you have the responsibility, here again, crosses district lines, crosses all of that. And for your district to be successful, the other two districts have to be successful. We have to be successful as a county. And I found that an easy philosophy to embrace. And but having said that, I still have all of this knowledge base I need to acquire. And some of it only comes through experience and through trial and error. Sadly, a lot of mine is through trial and error.
Well, and go ahead, Joe.
So, I'm looking at, which I don't know where you're going, but I think going to, strategic plan, vision, and out there. The budget to me, coming here and being new, I knew where it was going So when I mean, to me, when I look at something strategically or with vision or long-term, you know, I look at, you know, the property tax as being a broken model. I mean, when do you, I mean, there's people out there that lived here for 60 years and, you know, and they finally got their house paid off, but it's not paid off. You know, so, you know, there's a problem with, to some extent, how you take care of all of these needs. You know, as Ellen said, I mean, I have a company responsible for 150 stores. I knew what a budget was and knew that, you know, to me, you know, a budget is continued service. We have to continue services. Mike and I were very close to each other's numbers. You know, I'm a pretty conservative guy when it comes to spending, but also know that you have to continue services. But to me, it's long term, it's more of a model of property tax.
You know, you just.
What's wrong with?
So you want to, so here you are thinking very much like an originator. We didn't use system after you.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, what there is. I just know it's a problem. You know, and because you know, you vote for the budget, and so everybody puts you in a corner and says that you're voting to raise taxes. Well, really, you did. Really, really, commissioners don't set the rate. The valuation of the property sets the rate. How much in continuing services? Do you
Well, then
continue
that's the
the
choice that
services?
you're making is what services at what cost to which people. And that's what your choices are.
Yeah, and I mean, we're gonna take care of children. We're gonna take care of the elderly. You know, I'm the kind of guy that believes take care of children, take care of the elderly, and people in the middle kind of fend for themselves, you know, but you're not going to turn your back on children and things. You're going to try to make sure these things are protected and done and handled, and that's what, you know, Ms. Mandy does so well, and we're going to stand with those things, because how can you stand against that? You know, how can you throw, you know, ideology and, you know, things in there and stand against things like that? But we all want the same things. It's just, you know, I'm frustrated over the amount of money that we spend. I was having a discussion with somebody the other day. Everything's expensive. Everything. I mean, you think about it. We go try to build something. If we go and there's a need in this community, we're going to have to do that. If it was 10 million, you know, 10 years ago, goodness gracious, how much is it going to be now? It's a challenge, and the symptom is the budget. The problem is much bigger than that.
Well, and I think my major point in giving you this slide is to say that, you know, the budget really is how you actually allocate the resources, but what is it that you're visioning? And how does your budget actually accomplish that? How does it get you the goals that you said you thought were important? And what is your role as county government in achieving that vision? And to me, that's what the budget is the vehicle to actually make that happen. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on a strategic plan, because I do want us to get to this discussion about your vision. But I mean, this is why you have a plan, so that you can figure out what are your priorities. How do we actually allocate our resources towards those priorities? And by resources, I don't just mean the dollars, I mean the people too in your organization. How do we actually manage our performance so we get there? Again, this is which services at what kind of cost, and how well are we doing? Checking back in on how well we're doing. All of those things, really, an effective strategic plan, that's what that should be doing for you. So this is just this strategic public leadership model that we talk about at the school. And one of the reasons that we spent time talking about it internally before we adopted it in this particular way was we wanted to make sure that it's a planning model that makes sense for lots of different purposes, whether it's economic development planning, whether it's the organizational strategic plan, whether it's a community visioning plan, et cetera. So it's not as if it's overly complicated, and it's not rocket science, but it is, I think, a good visual to remind people what the processes are and how it can be feasible. So clearly thinking about sort of what is the context with which we're operating? What is the environment? What's happening that we need to be paying attention to? What do we understand to be, and we need to be paying attention to be able to plan for the future? That could be anything from policy changes at the state level, let's see if we can keep track of that, or at the federal level, or at the local level. It could be, it could be the economy. 5 years ago, would we have thought we would be here? Maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe not. Just understanding all those things that are influencing us in any particular way. It might be a new environmental regulation. It might be water crisis. It could be, I shouldn't say water around here either, should I? It could be any number of things. What's happening we need to be paying attention to. So what are the conditions that we'd like to create, and how are we going to get there? What would we need to change in order to make those conditions happen? And that's kind of the whole visioning long-range piece. The enact is simply all of those action plans. What are the specific actions? What are the tasks? Who's going to do it? When are we going to get it done? How much is it going to cost? Which is the next, allocate the resources. How do we organize ourselves to be able to do that and get that work done? And finally, how are we doing? Are we actually making progress? If we're not, why are we not? Who can make changes to the plans that we had? How often do we look at it? Who else is involved in making those changes? So it's again, it's developed this way in a circular fashion on purpose. It's a continuous process. You all have a strategic plan, I think that was 2009 through 2012. And was fairly detailed when I looked at it, not in depth, but just on a cursory basis. And I don't know to what extent the commission was involved. You've got history with that. Both of you have history with that, in setting that strategic plan.
We were involved. We had in this room, we kind of worked put it together.
And
With
so,
a lot of the staff as the brains.
well, and there is if I had a pointer, which I probably do, and I don't know how to work, and I'll probably screw it up. Oh, look. So this right here, this part right in here, well, let's do it this way. That's better. So there is a role for staff and a role for the elected officials, probably in all of these, but at different points, at different levels. You're probably going to be most involved in this part here, but let's face it, who else are you going to have to work with, like AV Tech or some other community partner? How you actually allocate your resources through your budget, whether you decide to change fee structures or anything like that. Those are allocation of resources. And then in terms of evaluation, again, there might be some performance measures that the board needs to be paying attention to, but there are probably a whole host of other detailed performance measures that the staff needs to be paying attention to. But there's a way for the board to be involved in any of these particular places. An example I'll give you from another county that I've worked with. They had something like 264 goals and objectives. What the hell can you do with 264 goals? You're stymied, you're stuck. You don't know. Something's going to have to rise to the top of that. So they didn't do anything, which wasn't very helpful. So we helped them kind of figure out what are the main 8 goal areas we need to be paying attention to as a board. As an organization, how does our budget line up with those 8 goals? As an appointment authority, and you all talked about sort of the board appointment thing that you do, this particular county had, no lie, twice the average, so it's about 70-something boards and commissions that they appointed and tried to manage. Can you do that? No, not very well and not very effectively. Not a lot of clarity. How do you deal with that? So what we did with that was once we had 8 goal areas, we lined up those 76 boards and commissions and said, are they statutorily required? Are they mandated in a particular way? Do they need to be sunsetted? They just outlived their original purpose and intention. So looking at mapping those boards and commissions to the 8 goal areas was the job of the commissioners. That is within that's what you do. So they decided to jettison a couple or sunset a couple. I'm not quite sure where they are in terms of numbers, but the intention was you can't, as a board, manage all of that, and that's part of your responsibility too. Looking at core services, they actually made some organizational changes in the way that they did things. They had that discussion about what we'd like to do. I will not forget the conversation about a lactation consultant at the health department. That was kind of like, if we had all the money in the world, we'd like to do that, but that is not a core service of county government. So that just goes away. So they used that to kind of develop that budget discipline, because it is hard to remember when you're in the thick of it and people are saying, we need help. And you want to be responsive, and yet if it's not within what your focus is, it helps you be able to say no as well as yes. I mean, it kind of works both ways. Any questions? I'm not trying to do a hard sell, but I am trying to give you a way to think about how to manage your organization. I've worked with another community, and they are using this, they are actually instituting a performance, I don't remember exactly, a new budgeting system. I'm going to get the words wrong, the acronym wrong, so. But they're actually instituting a new budgeting system that is tied to their strategic plan, and it's not as easy as you think. Actually operationalizing your strategic plan is hard work. And there's not a lot of research actually out there that talks about how to do that. So we've spent some time looking at doing that and trying to document some of those specific practices. But we tried to give some meaningful data to the elected officials to be able to actually set priorities. So they took 90-some programs, for instance, sorted them in ways and grouped them in ways around their objectives so that they could make some choices. The other thing that organizations can do, and some have and some are better than others, is using their performance appraisal systems throughout the organization to line up their staff and say, okay, what's my particular role in furthering this plan? That's a level of detail that, is a lot and may not interest you all as a board, but I'm saying that's the kind of work that a plan can do for your organization in making that plan relevant for every employee. So, are there any comments or questions or reflections about this notion of strategic? It's really, this is the planning, the whole leadership piece is a whole nother discussion.
I've got one.
Yeah.
What are some of the best practices you've seen with committees and organizations reporting back to the commission?
Well, I think the key to that is clarity in terms of what it is that you're asking them to do, and then what are you going to do with that? In other words, the worst thing you can do is ask them to come up with a set of recommendations that then you don't actually pay attention to. And then it's like, why do you need me? If you tap those folks because they have a perspective or expertise or some kind of technical knowledge that you all don't have. I mean, you already talked about how big the job is. You'll need that kind of input. So I think being clear on what the charge is, and then also being clear on kind of what you expect to do with those. Are you asking them for recommendations? Are you asking them for a series of recommendations? Are you, looking, and then you all will make the choice. Being clear on who's the decision maker in that regard, I think, is important as well.
So, and to piggyback on Chairman's question, other counties, do they take and have committees and take a commissioner who is experienced in that, and like if we had any regarding the Humane Society or anything regarding animals, treatment animals, or coming back with something back to us that says, okay, here's how we think would be the best way to meet that need. Do other boards if, as a chairman, said, okay, we would like for you to work with 2 or 3 people, and that chairman know who they are, and they come back and report to the board for different things. I mean, is that the way other boards do things? Is use like a commissioner to work with certain, somebody may have an interest in parks, somebody may have an interest in, a certain industry, or they may have an interest in.
Are you talking about actually serving on boards and commissions?
I'm not talking about a board, I'm talking about a committee. So you said
Okay.
a committee, so to me, a committee is totally different from a board.
Yeah.
Committee would be, me and the chairman again, and Mandy, that'd be a committee. And we're gonna check out something that we actually want to be more plugged into it during the process instead of just saying, Mandy, would you go ahead and put that together and bring it back to us? But we either, because maybe we have expertise in that area, maybe we want to be part of it and be more plugged in.
I don't know that I know the answer to that question in terms of the best practice or what the norm is. I mean, clearly that's the way that you're going to spread yourself out to be able to get the information and to be more knowledgeable about that. But in terms of what I'm struggling with is the whole notion about the open meetings, et cetera, and how that influences that. So the membership, I have to be more specific to get an answer for that. I was thinking about, what I was talking about was board-appointed boards and commissions, which would be a different thing.
You used to do a boards and commission recognition day where they do reports out or lunch or a be appointed boards and commissions. And
I remember that.
You probably remember that, where they all reported out to the commissioners on their priorities. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, we did a lunch forum.
Yeah, UNCF.
That fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
I remember that though.
And so the purpose of that was to kind of get up to speed on kind of where people, what their work was, or to provide them feedback from the commission perspective.
I think that they talked about their accomplishments, and as I recalled it, they were directed by the visioning the commissioners set versus the other way. And then they talked about what they call were major issues in their area. But that, is that pretty close?
Yeah, they kind of just hit the highlights.
Yeah, the highlights, couple of slides for each.
Was that an all-day deal or something?
It really wasn't
Luncheon,
lunch.
luncheon.
Yeah, a couple of hours
Yeah.
at lunch.
Yeah.
So, but what's key in that, what I heard you just say is that their vision then was able to line up with what the commissioner's vision was. So again, back to that plastic bag thing.
Right.
If you, one of the advantages of setting your strategic plan is that others in the community understand where you're headed, whether it's the boards and commissions that work with you or for you, or however you want to work that, or whether it's the community nonprofits that also have a stake in that and understand either how they can line up and partner with, or at least not be in conflict with priorities. So that's another huge advantage in having something put together that is a clear statement of your intentions.
I remember when we were at the commissioner convention in Fort Worth. I think it was you, David. Anyway, I guess it was Wake County, and one of their goals is that it might not. I can't remember what county. It was a pretty big county, but all the commissioners, they start in the budget like as soon as they pass the one for that year, and then they all vote for the budget. And it's very important to them that they all vote for the budget. And what they've been able to do is work collectively so that everybody feels like they have skin in the game. So nobody can say, well, I didn't do it. But I thought it was an interesting approach. Was that you, David?
I think it was that seminar we went to about
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
Well, again, I state that out there because I think it can be useful in a variety of ways. What I had hoped that we could focus on this morning is some conversation about what is the vision for this community and what is the county's role in actually achieving that vision. And then I thought, actually last night I edited this, but I didn't on this one. Yeah, what areas do you, yes, I did. What areas do you need to be working on, basically? So again, sort of what are the particular goal areas that you need to be focusing on? And those are the kinds of, those three key questions are kind of what I'd like for us to work on in the next little bit. Okay, so I have an exercise that I'd like to break you up into pairs and have a conversation with one another, recognizing that you've got, as Joe pointed out, sort of an ever-changing sea of possibilities. Stuff's happening all the time, and so whether that's changes in the demographics, which we haven't even touched on, whether it's changes in policy, whether it's changes in the organization or in resource allocations, growth pressures, infrastructure needs. I don't know anything about your infrastructure and where that is in terms of aging, et cetera, and what the needs are. It could be about environmental implications. It could be about working relationships. I don't know what they are. But all of those things create opportunities for strategic change. And so the ability to actually act on that and do something with those possibilities is what you have a chance to influence at this point. So what I'd like for you to do is to kind of get in pairs and have a conversation around three key questions. And the way I'd like to do that, if you and I were a pair, and we're not going to be, I would ask you these three questions, and I would listen to what you had to say, and then we would switch. And you would ask me these three questions, and you would listen to what I had to say. You can make notes here. I will say, this is a practice on your listening skills. I thought for years that the way to be an effective leader was to just simply talk longer, louder, and harder, and you would come around to my point of view. And so what I would spend time doing is thinking, well, okay, I'm having a conversation with David, and he's talking to me, but really I'm thinking about what I want to say to him. I'm asking you to really practice on listening to what your partner is saying to you. Because we're going to put you in small groups, and it's going to be your job to represent your partner's viewpoint in that small group. Okay? So these are the three questions that I want you to focus on. What are the unique Buncombe County aspects, that's people, places, services, quality of life, whatever it is, that you hold dear? I don't know if you've got this yet.
Oh,
It was intentional on my part.
are you going to give us a prior read to write it?
Yeah, good.
No,
That
I'm
way
gonna
we
give it
can
to you.
listen and not write down.
So, and they're right here. So what are the unique Buncombe County aspects that you hold dear and that you want to preserve for future generations? So, what words come to mind when you think about what it is that you hold dear and that you want to hold on to, you want to maintain? Okay. Then I want you to think forward and imagine the county 15 years from now. This is hard. 15 years. Think about what 15 years in your life now has been. 15 years ago, I had toddlers. Now they're graduated and in college. They got their own house. They got a dog. All of that. 15 years is a long time. So I want you to think about 15 years from now. What is it that you see? What is your vision today of the future? And think about, economic development efforts. What kind of successes have you realized? How did that happen over the years? Where are people gathering? What are they doing? What activities are they engaged in? What does the physical infrastructure look like? What are people saying about how the county actually does its work? And what's happening with your workforce? What's the mood amongst employees? You have the benefit you have is you have folks here with some key folks with lots of experience. My guess is they won't be here in 15 years. Not working for the county anyway.
I thought it's a good bet.
Pardon me?
That's a good bet.
Okay. So you'll need to be thinking about how to replicate that kind of level of expertise and knowledge and organizational history. And that's partly your job as well.
Yeah.
So then thinking ahead even further, it's a vibrant community. People are thinking about how all that health came about, and I want you to really think about how you'd answer this question. This vision really came to life when blank happened. Either things changed or a decision or some kind of key event. What was the trigger that actually created that vibrant future that you visioned? So I want you to focus on today. What do you hold dear? You want to make sure it goes into the future. Think about the future. What are all those activities? And then think about what was the trigger for creating that future that you visioned. So I'm going to suggest that you find a partner. I'm not going to make an assignment. It's an opportunity for you to really have some good conversation with somebody you don't have a chance to talk with every day. And I want you to partner up. Spend about 12 minutes each doing this interview, making notes. So 25 minutes total, and then we're going to come back, I think, to 2 groups. We're going to move you from your table because we're going to need that table. Okay? So when you come back, I'd like for you to sit not with your partner. Okay? So we're going to have 2 groups, not with your partner. Clear? You can do it in here, you can walk around. I don't know the building well enough to know where you can walk
And
around.
so what are we going to do with the data that we?
What I want to do then is have in small groups, I want you to have some conversation about what are the things that are emerging. So I want to have some sense of corporately, where is your vision? What is your vision? What does it include? And what are the things that are going to help create that vision? That's what we're striving towards, that data. Make sense? Consistent with what we said we were going to do? All right. This is where you'll wander around for 30 seconds looking for a partner. Chap like that.
Mandy, go with this.
I'll do Donna and Kathy. One will be back. We're good.
I think there's a benefit in mixing staff and board as well.
I think they picked their partners.
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
do. Oh, we don't have to stay with that. We can. No, I think
Or you can do it in triads if you want, and then we just have to spend a little more time. If you want a staff person in your,
Well, you
actually,
got-
I like that
Well,
idea.
you got 3 staffs, won't you? You can add 3 to
Yeah.
the group.
Let's do that and extend it to probably 15, well, you still have 12 minutes, but we're gonna have longer. I'll pay attention to the timing. Chance to debrief. I'm changing the way I'm going to do this. I'm going to put you in 3 groups so that you will not be with your partner. Okay? And what I'd like for you to do, so I've got a 1 table, 2 table, 3 tables over here, is to you have only 20 minutes or so up to this, so you don't have a long time. Highlights of this question about unique aspects. Okay? Share at your table what your discussion was. What are the highlights of the unique aspects? And then this question around number 2 and number 3, around the vision and the sort of what are the conditions, what do you need to be working on? What I'd like for you to do is have the conversation again. Share what your small group conversation was in your new small group. What are the themes that are developing out of that? Because I bet you're going to hear some consistency. So what are the words that are going to be describing your vision? And when you have a theme, put one particular theme per post-it. Okay? And then this last question about sort of what are the conditions or what are you going to need to be working on? Again, I'm expecting that there are going to be themes developing through these conversations. So I'm going to ask you to put one of those conditions or those focus areas or the goal areas, whatever words you want to use, for that. So what we'll do is we'll be generating from 3 different groups responses to the vision question and this condition or goal area question, and then we'll post it and talk about that. So you have about 20 minutes in your 3 different groups to do that. Are there questions? Because there usually are. Nope. Again, I want to make sure that we can share as much as we can and see where we have areas of agreement. So that's why we're looking for themes. 1 table here, 1 table there, 1 table there.